Hey there, garden friends. It's Heather at Bush Poppy Farm, and today I'm talking to you about drip irrigation. So my drip system consists of a timer and some other equipment at the hose bib, and then mainline tubing, which is about a 1/2 inch pipe, and then drip tape. And so I'll walk you through how I set all of that up. So here at the hose bib, the first thing that we connect is our timer. And this actually is a Bluetooth timer. I can use my phone to set up manual watering and the schedule and all that kind of stuff. So this is the timer. It's a Galcon timer that I got through DripWorks as part of this system, but you can use any other kind of timer. It doesn't really matter. This one was pretty inexpensive. And then comes the filter. So you want one of these because you don't know, especially this is well water, and I have tested it and there's some particulate matter in there, so I definitely don't want that clogging up my drip system. So I have a filter here, and I will have to clean this out occasionally to make sure that I can, that it keeps doing its job. And this end, I'm going to need to put a plug on. This would be to run a separate line if I wanted to bypass the filter, but I'm not going to do that. This is a 10 psi pressure regulator. Also important, you have to figure out first how much pressure your system has. And there is a really great video on the DripWorks website that shows you how to do that with a 5-gallon bucket and a hose. You can also just buy a pressure regulator tester that you plug in right at the hose bib, and that will tell you how much pressure you have in your system. So then from there, I just connect everything. So this is the mainline tubing, and I have put some elbow joints here so that I can just make sure nothing gets crimped, and I can attach it to the ground to not be a tripping hazard. We have another elbow joint there, and then this main line keeps going. I haven't laid out the lines for this bed yet, but that's coming. And then these lines are laid out on this bed. So I will show you how I did all that. We'll have some video of that. And it ends down here with this end cap, which I can take off and add extra mainline tubing if I want to irrigate this area once I get it ready for planting. So it's totally customizable. I can also, depending on the pressure of my system, hook up another drip system, which I'm going to do, off of one of these other spigots to irrigate the upper planting field. So I'm starting to put the drip line on these beds, and this is the mainline tubing. Here you can see it is, hang on, let me grab the tag. I believe it's 1/2 inch. So this is 1/2 inch mainline tubing. I have a end cap on it. Now I can extend this and change out that end cap for just another connector so that I can water this whole area as well at some point. So these are very adjustable. Okay, so this mainline tubing goes all the way along here and connects into the hose bib. And then in front of each bed, now I run 4 lines. This is a 3-foot wide bed, and I run 4 lines. And that might seem like a lot, but we're in California. We get no precipitation between now, which is March 10th, and probably late October, early November, if we're lucky. 0 precipitation. So we have to irrigate. We don't have a choice. And if you don't irrigate enough, everything dies. So I use 4 rows of drip tape on my 3-foot wide bed. And drip tape is simply this stuff. It is basically a tube with emitters every 6 inches. Do you see that little pink dot? And here's another one. So water just kind of slowly bubbles out, drips out of these holes. The nice thing about it being every 6 inches is that the majority of things that I plant at a 6-inch interval. So I can just plant them at the locations of the drip. And so that actually makes planting very, very easy. So how do you connect them? Okay, so the drip tape is connected to the mainline tubing through these valves. And a valve looks like this. It has this small, I think it's a like 1/4 inch hole on the end here. And you use a punch to punch into the mainline tubing. Then you pop this guy in there, like that. And then the drip tape goes on the end here, and you tighten this up, and it holds the drip tape in place. Now these, you don't have to go with these kind of valves. You can get these connectors that don't have a valve on them. This though is wonderful because I can turn off the water to individual lines. So let's say I have a mixed use bed and I have something in it that needs a lot of water and something that doesn't. I can turn off the valve for those lines whenever I want, and then the rest of the bed can still get water. So I always like to use it. It's a little bit more, costs a little bit more for these, but I prefer them. And then on the end down here, so we roll out the drip tape. You want to keep the white lines facing up. That's because it prevents the emitters from getting clogged by soil and dirt. And then down here at the end, I have a brick here to hold them in place until I can tack them down. But this is another end cap. So it seals off the end. Lots of people just, and I've done this before too, you can cut the tape, cut off a piece of the tape, fold it up and slide that piece of tape on to kind of crimp it closed. That works as long as you don't have super, really high pressure. If you have really high pressure water, that blows them right off the end. And so I tend to use the end caps because then I know it's there. One thing though, you got to know with drip tape, or any kind of drip system or any irrigation system, you need to check it. You can't just set it up and be like, okay, it's working. You need to routinely check it because you'll spring little holes occasionally. You will, an emitter will clog or break. So you just gotta keep an eye on it to make sure all of your plants are getting the irrigation things that they need. So then the next thing I do is I use landscape staples and I just tack it down in places because when the water is on, it will fill the tube and with pressure, and the tube will tend to get a little wonky and move around and stuff in the bed. So you want to make sure that the tube stays in place so it doesn't knock over brand new seedlings, whatever. Once your plants get big enough, then it doesn't really matter because the tube can move all at once. The plants are going to hold it in place. But in the beginning, you want them to stay where you put them. So now I'm just going to get the rest of these lines laid out, and that'll be it for this project. So I'm going to do the same exact thing for this bed. And all you do is you take this hole punch here and you use it to poke a hole. So I have 4 connectors up top here. I'm going to poke a hole right where I want it. There we go. And then with that end, I'm going to slot it into the hole. There we go. Now it's ready to receive the drip tape. Okay, a few other part types that you might want to use. Connectors. So here's one that will connect mainline tubing on this end and drip tape on this end. So let's say down here where I have my mainline tubing capped off, maybe I want to continue that. I can use one of these connectors there to connect the mainline tubing on the end to some drip, or this also works on the other end of mainline tubing. So I could just join up a whole new piece of mainline tubing if I wanted a header to run drip off of in the same way I've done these beds. Then there is this type of connector. It looks the same, but it's for drip tape on both ends. So let's say you're running your drip tape and you run out in the middle of a row or something like that, and you need a few more feet of drip tape or whatever. You can just use one of these to connect two pieces together. Very handy, because you want to use, like, I try to use every last scrap of the drip tubing, and then, you know, I can patch together other pieces as I need them. And then finally, another piece that I use sometimes, an elbow joint. So let's say I'm running drip tubing down a bed that's running this direction and then it going this direction, and I want to keep it all on the same line. I can do that with this. So questions about durability. I don't like buying plastic. I try to avoid that. The plastic that I do buy, I make sure that I can use it over and over and over and over again. So the plastic trays that I use for my seedlings, I use these until they literally completely disintegrate. So, you know, I try to keep things out of the waste system. Drip tubing, I usually get 2, sometimes 3 seasons out of them. So it does last, and the connector pieces last for a really long time because they are hard extruded plastic, so they last for a really long time. Occasionally you'll get little, you know, you'll spring little leaks in the drip tubing. That's fine. Just cut out that section and patch it together with those connectors that I showed you. Then you don't have a leak anymore. And usually when you get a leak in the drip tubing, it's just like it's like a fine mist that comes out because the puncture is so small. So it's not usually that big of a deal, and it's super easy to repair. I get all of my stuff from DripWorks. It's a company online, DripWorks, and they sell kits. And so if you have a small garden, they have like the small garden kit with, they've kind of measured it out. This is how many square feet it will cover. They have large garden kits. You can buy all these pieces individually. They have way more than just what I have here. So any kind of irrigation thing you can imagine, they've got. You can get a lot of irrigation stuff like this at your local hardware stores. Sometimes nurseries, plant nurseries carry them. So you don't have to go online to get them. What I would say is when you choose a brand, stick with it, because the pieces and parts are not always interchangeable, and that can get frustrating. So like I just realized I need to buy more end caps. I can cap off the tubing like I told you before, where I just cut. So here, I'll show you, I'll demonstrate so that makes sense. So let's say this is the end of my row. So what I would do is I would trim off a piece, okay? And then I have to get rid of this emitter because it really won't fold over. So then I take the end of the row, I fold it like this, fold it in half. You can even fold it in double. Then I fold this piece like that, crimp it, and take this other piece that I cut off and slide it on the end. There you go. So now it is sealed. Like I said, if you have really high pressure in your system, this will blow right off the end. So it works in a pinch, and for some people it works all season and it's perfect for them. It just depends on the pressure in your system. On the DripWorks website, they have a really great video that shows you how to figure out what the pressure in your system is, and it's super simple. It involves a 5-gallon bucket and your hose. So check that out, because then you'll know what type of pressure regulator to get, and you'll know, you'll be sure that you won't have constant blowouts and stuff. So that's really a good step to take. I tested this pressure, and so I know exactly where it's at. And then once you know that, you can use some basic math to figure out how many lines can you run off of that one hose bib without losing tons of pressure and it just not working. So it all comes together, and it's kind of fun to put these systems together. They last for a really long time. They get water right to the roots of your plant. And if you're in an arid place like I am, you don't lose water in the air to evaporation from overhead watering, from overhead sprinklers. Now, I still overhead water when I do things like when I fertilize my plants. I use foliar sprays, like I've talked before, and I either do that. I also use soil drenches too. So if I'm going to soil drench, I will use my watering can, and I will put my fish emulsion or my worm compost tea or my calcium extract in there with the water, and I will overhead water everything, right? But or if I'm using my backpack sprayer as a foliar feed, but they get their clean fresh water through the drip system. So there's good things about both. If you're lucky and you're in an area that gets lots of irrigation, lots of rain, then you wouldn't need to do this step. You could just monitor it, and then on the occasions that you things might be dry, you can just come out and hand water. It just depends on how big your operation is, so how big your garden is. So I hope that you enjoyed learning about drip systems today and how I use them here on the farm. I use the same system at the home farm as I do here at the ranch, and it works great for me. The other nice thing about this drip system for me here is that because the water is coming out slowly and it's a slow release, it percolates all the way down through these layers, and it will help to decompose the cardboard that's under these beds, and it will also help to start softening up and delivering nutrients to the soil below the cardboard. So that is really my ultimate goal, is to make all of this much more workable. I can't even get the landscape staples in the ground to really hold all this down, but that will change. And by next spring, I'll be able to push them into the ground all the way, and that'll be really exciting. So it's just this first step, and this type of irrigation is one of the many processes that helps me get to that end goal. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.